Hello, I'm Shanine, and welcome to the Chit Chat podcast, where we explore life through soulful conversation. I'm joined today by Linda Sampey, who explores her experience of soul alchemy and transforming tragedy into a deeper understanding of life. I hope that you enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Chit Chat podcast, and I'm joined today by the beautiful Linda Sampey, who I met as a doTERRA wellness advocate. Linda was presenting some incredible information about oils, and that's how I ended up becoming connected with her, and we've been connecting with each other on Facebook and on Instagram online ever since. So it's really lovely to welcome you to the podcast today, Linda. And I'm so excited to explore more of what you're doing, because I know that as well as working with essential oils, you also explore spiritual healing practices and are having your own journey of spirituality. So I'm really looking forward to exploring that more with you today. So I would love to know, just to start with, if you could just share a little bit more about who you are and what you're interested in exploring in terms of the work that you do, and the way that you are opening yourself up to help others in life.
Yeah, okay. Well, firstly, thank you so much, Shawneen, for having me on. This is my first podcast, so I feel honored. It's great to get the chance to explore a whole new platform. I love podcasts. I'm like a podcast fanatic, actually. So this is so cool. So yeah, I guess how do I start off? I I'm a mom of two little boys. I live in Ireland. I'm originally from the Bronx in New York. I moved to Ireland when I was 17 and did 1 year of like school here and then went to college. So I've always been a little bit like torn in my identity. Like, am I American? Am I Irish? But I think it's been brilliant for me because it's given me a good appreciation of many different cultures and a chance to like move around, meet a lot of different people and socialize and kind of always have to make new friends, not get too comfortable, not be too much in my comfort zone. So so yeah, a little bit of a different upbringing in that way. And you know, I think that I have seven older brothers and sisters, and we're all Irish American, like both parents are Irish, right? But I was the only one that really wanted to live in Ireland, just always loved it. When I was really little, I remember like fourth grade teacher showing us a history book or a geography book, and it had Dublin, and I raised my hand and I said, I'm going to live there. And the whole class started to laugh at me, but I didn't care because I knew it was in my soul that that was where I was supposed to be. And I used to journal when I was like 12 about how I was going to move to Ireland, and I had all these incredible stories, fantasies that I would journal, and then they all started to come true. Like in ways that were kind of incredible. I had this favorite movie called Circle of Friends, and it was all about a young Irish boy and Irish girl meeting in college and falling in love. And I kept writing in my journal that I was going to marry someone like him and meet them in college, and like literally creating the movie or something in my head. And I ended up moving to Ireland by accident, like it wasn't something that was planned. And the school that I went to was one of the places where the movie was filmed. And the people in my class were actually, some of them were actually in the movie. And I actually ended up dating a guy that was very like the lead character in the movie and played rugby in the same place where the film was made. So I really, at a very young age, started to learn how to manifest things, but I didn't know, like, I couldn't tell you that that's what I was doing. I just thought it was a freaky coincidence. But as I got older, when I was about 25, I was actually going on a holiday with a friend and I picked up a book in the airport, as you do, and it was The Secret. I had no interest in personal development or anything spiritual at that point in my life. That book just caught me. My intuition just said, pick up that book. And I started reading it on the beach. And it was like a door opened to my new life, that I now realized that I had some control over where my life was going to go, and get what I wanted. And I learned about manifestation, and I realized then, looking back, I was already doing that, but by accident. So imagine if I was able to use what I knew and all this new stuff to actually manifest on purpose, how powerful that would be. And so from that day, after reading that book, I went on a very kind of huge personal development journey throughout the rest of my 20s, where I spent, I think, in 1 year to 1.5 years, I spent about 20,000 euros on multiple coaching programs to become a coach, and go over to see Tony Robbins live, and just really immerse myself in personal development. And then when I felt ready to actually meet the love of my life and get married, I used the manifestation stuff that I had been uncovering and intuitively, and I literally manifested him in 1 week. And I'm not kidding, like, it was a very crazy story. I actually did a YouTube video about it. So much so to the point where when I was visualizing him, when I was trying to manifest him, I created this exact scene in Dublin where we would be and what we would be doing, and that it would be snowing. And 6 months after we met, that exact scene was actually, it happened in real life. And that's when I was like, oh my God. And it's really unusual for it to be snowing in Dublin. Like, it almost never happens. So yeah, I knew when we walked past the exact building that had been in my visualization, and all of that. So I knew then that, like, manifesting was a real thing. And I guess that really started to open me up more spiritually. And I think a lot of times people, they might start on a personal development journey first, and then it leads them into a more spiritual path, because they want more out of life, but they're not just naturally spiritual, or they weren't raised in that kind of a household. Um, so yeah, I think that's what really was the bridge for me to start becoming more drawn. And then as I got into doTERRA as a business, I started that business because, with all the coaching and the money and the training I had done, I realized that if I use my skills as a coach to grow a doTERRA team, I would have a lot more financial security and freedom than if I was just working with people one on one. And I wanted to start having a family, and I didn't want to be tying my time to my money. So I worked really hard for the first couple of years before I had my first child with doTERRA, and I built up enough money that I haven't had to um, leave my kids really much since they were born. I've really worked around them and had a lot of flexibility, and had a business that I could take a lot of time off when there was family issues, health issues, death in the family. Like, because I've been doing it since 2014, so that's quite a long time. So it's blessed me and my family quite a lot by giving me time with them that I wouldn't have had otherwise if I had worked in a regular corporate kind of job, which is what I did before doTERRA. So, but the thing with doTERRA as well, and I didn't realize this at the time, the more I spent around the oils, they were opening me up spiritually as well. They were working on traumas. They were making me more receptive to things. And I was in a community of other people who were all like-minded people who wanted to help other people, who wanted to be of service, who loved natural health, who appreciated nature. And so, of course, I started to be introduced to these amazing people, these healers, and um, just like a wider range of people. And so that opened me up again, even more spiritually. And so when I started, I think my real spiritual awakening was around 2019. I remember the exact day. Um, I don't even know if you want me to go into that, but I know from that day forward, it became a huge part of my life. But I was still very scared to kind of share it with people outside of my little safety net of spiritual friends. It's not something I would have posted online. It's not something I would have talked to about with my family. It's not something that most of my friends knew that I was into. It was like a private thing for me. Um, and then when we had, those moments in life where it can bring you to your knees, and we had a very serious death in our family, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But when that happened for us in 2021, the spiritual beliefs and interests I had was what saved me, because I got into spirituality because I wanted to be happier and I wanted to manifest more and um, feel more connected. But I didn't anticipate that it would literally save my life when tragedy would come to our door. Um, so it did. It really got me through the dark night of the soul, and it's become such a huge part of me now that I definitely can't see myself working in any other space or fulfilling my soul's purpose here in any other way, really. So doTERRA is still a huge part of what I do. I love sharing the oils with people and teaching people about the natural options that they have and the empowerment they can have by having something in the house for almost anything that should arise. But I've gone way more on the spiritual path with the oils now, and I've done, oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed to say I probably have done like 10 or maybe 12 spiritual courses in the last 2 years. So I've just thrown myself into as many different things as I could handle and tried to see like what was the one that I really wanted to go further with, which I'm still like going deeper with that. But I'm starting to finally see one that's really drawing me, that I feel like I have the most natural ability with, actually. um because I love them all, but some of them, as much as I try to learn them, I just can't. They're very difficult, some of them. So yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell a lot about me and how I got into the spiritual side of things. I don't know if you have any questions based on all of that stuff
I
I just said,
do.
but
I
okay.
do. Thank you so much for sharing the journey of how you've ended up being where you are today. And I would absolutely love to know which spiritual path you found that you feel most aligned with. And also, if you are open to sharing some of your experiences of spiritual awakening, I would absolutely love to hear more about that as well. But I
Sure.
also just want to reflect back some of what you said, because I think it's incredibly profound to realize that as a child, as a young person growing up in New York, you were already beginning to plant the seeds of what you wanted your life to be, even though, as you say, you didn't realize how to do that consciously until you read The Secret and you kind of realized that that was manifestation. But it just demonstrates to me that we've always had the capacity and the ability to manifest the kind of life that we want to live through our capacity to plant intentions and to move in the direction of the things that we want to experience. And I think it's wonderful that even without trying, even without realizing, you've been able to create the life that you dreamed about as a younger person. I just think that's really wonderful. And I really just want to reflect back how powerful that is and how special that is that you've found that capacity within yourself. And not only have you learned how to consciously do it as an adult, but you've also realized that you've always had the ability to do that. It's innate within you, it's natural. I think that's absolutely
Yeah.
wonderful.
And I think kids are the perfect manifestors because everything for them is fantasy, it's imagination, it's having fun, it's not feeling pressured, it's limitless potential. So when I was a 28-year-old and I wanted to manifest my husband, I literally did what I did as a kid. I made it fun. I had no expectations. It was kind of like a joke. I said, I'll just play around with this and see what happens, because I didn't even really want to get married, but I just wanted to see if I could do it. So I just literally created this mind movie in my head of a scene from something we would do together. I didn't know what he would look like, but I knew he was going to be tall. And I saw us on our way home from a personal development seminar, holding hands, walking past Trinity College, and I don't know why I picked snow. I really don't know that. But within a week, I started a job at an office, and I remember the day I went for the interview, I was like, "My future husband is in this building, like he's here." And I was like, "This is weird," and I could feel like I could see a sea of men with shirts because I got the job in like a corporate IT sales place. It was mostly all men, and I saw the sea of shirts, and I thought he's one of them. Very strong, intuitive kind of feeling about it. And again, like laughing, thinking this is such a joke, like this is such fun. Not taking it too seriously. And then when I met him, and we actually ended up having our first kiss at 11 minutes past 11 on the 11th of the 11th, 2011. And
Love that.
the only reason that I knew that was because, like I said, I wasn't even that spiritual then. So the numbers would have made no, but I had a friend who was, and she was always banging on about 11, 11, 11. And then this man who was in the pub was sitting at the bar with headphones on, which is a really weird thing to do at like a young person's kind of meeting pub. He was an older man, and he turned around and he asked, "Was that your first kiss?" And we said yes. And he goes, "Do you know that it was at 11 minutes past 11 on the 11th?" And I was like, "No, I didn't know that." And I don't know what was going on. And then he just poofed. Like it was like he just vanished. And my husband and I now always talk about that experience. And if he didn't remember it, I would have thought I was imagining it because it was like he wasn't a real person. And I've now begun to think that he was probably my guardian angel, came into human form to give me like a hey, this is the one. Don't screw this up. You've been praying to us, asking for him. You've got him now. Don't play games like you normally would. And just mess this one up, right? And the 1111 for me, all the ones, is a sign from the angels saying there's a doorway now, there's an opportunity. We're here, we're giving you something, so pay attention. So that's like the biggest 1111 of all time, right? So I've always had angels were actually my first spiritual um, real connection because I was raised as an Irish Catholic in New York and went to Catholic school when I got to Ireland, and I never really felt a connection to that religion. It was more like a cultural thing. I liked just knowing that I belonged to something, right? But I didn't really like the Bible, and I felt a bit icky in the church. I never got anything from it per se. I had no real opinion on Jesus. I mean, I thought he was pretty cool, but I didn't feel any connection to him personally. I always liked Mother Mary and some of the saints, and but I remember like in my early 20s buying my first pack of angel cards and getting a lot of like connection to the angels, praying to them all the time, asking them for help, reading a few books on them. So for me, the angels were my doorway into the spirit world and always had a love for them. And in recent years, that has just exploded my love of angels and my study of them. And I've begun some angel energy training in IET, integrated energy therapy. So they've just continued to grow. But in the meantime, I've completely learned to connect with Jesus and love him, but not the religious aspect. I like more the Christ consciousness aspect of him. Um, and so yeah, I was saying something now. I probably lost my train of thought. But oh yeah, going back to the manifestation and the 1111 and all that stuff. Um, I ended up 6 months later after me and Kieran first met. We were at a personal development seminar on a Saturday, and we decided we would walk home instead of get a cab, which was a really long walk, and we've never did anything like that after. So it's very unusual. Obviously, the universe was at work on that day, and we walked past Trinity College, and we were holding hands, and it was snowing, and it was like the epitome of deja vu, where I went, "Oh, this is definitely the guy," because I manifested this exact vision, right? And so I knew without a shadow of a doubt that it was him. And he asked me to marry him within 4 months. Um, and we waited then like a while with the engagement because I didn't want to rush things. But yeah, I again that proved to me the power of what you can do. And I've since taught what I did to a couple of friends, and one of them was married within a year after she followed what I said. So like, not only do I know I can do it, but I know like I can teach people, anybody can do it. It's not actually that difficult. Um, so yeah, so that's kind of more information on that. As far as the spiritual path that's really making me most excited at the moment, that I think is my natural kind of thing, is probably accessing the Akashic Records. Um, so I'll just give you a list. I have studied quite a lot of courses in the tarot cards. Um, I love the tarot. I found that was the thing I really got into after we had the terrible tragedy in our family. So I'll just tell you, it was September 27th, 2021, and I had three little boys. One was 5. No, one had just turned 5. The other one had just turned 2. And I had a 3-month-old little boy named Shay. And we had just moved house because we had a traumatic experience with our landlord. He wanted the house back during COVID and we couldn't get anywhere else. He was unbelievably abusive and horrible, um, even while I was heavily pregnant and we had done everything right. So that was trauma on top of the 10-month COVID lockdown, and my pregnancy had been quite bad. I'd had a lot of complications. But anyways, we seemed like things were getting better. We'd just moved and the baby was perfectly healthy. And then on September 27th, I woke up and he wasn't responsive, and rushed to the emergency room, and they tried to save him, but he crossed over, and it was the worst, most horrible experience I would never ever wish on any other human. But it did open me up even more spiritually than I would have ever been able to experience, because I actually had what they call a shared death experience. It's often referred to as an SDE. So most people know about a near death experience, right? The NDEs. And a shared death experience is when you experience something um, like the person in the room who's dying. It's absolutely most common amongst mothers with their children. However, it could happen to a doctor or a nurse in the room, or anybody it could happen to. It usually is more likely to happen to a family member, but especially a mother and her child. But it could include things like seeing the spirit leave the body. It could include things like seeing other family members come into the room from spirit to take the person over. Um, in my case, I basically left my own body and I floated to the top of the room, and I could see my little son on the table. I could see all the nurses and doctors running around, and I could see the top of my own head. And that was when I was like, oh, I don't think I should be able to see myself or this angle, like what's going on. Um, and I felt like calm. I felt a sense of peace and calm. It only lasted very briefly, but I don't know. I feel like maybe my soul tried to go up and bring my son's soul back down or something like that. But I feel like it was a gift from the divine, from my son, to show me that my son is not, there is no death. Your spirit is not, um, your spirit cannot be killed. It leaves the body when it's time to transition over. So I know that. I experienced it. So that really helped me deal with the grief. Um, and it really gave me a whole new appreciation of spirituality in the spirit world. And um, I was also really blessed to have a strong connection to my son in spirit. Within the first couple of days, I started to get messages from him, telepathic messages, which, you know, of course, I kind of laughed at myself and thought, I think I'm obviously just in trauma and I'm losing my mind here. So, as anybody would, right? Because I had never had anything like that before. Um, but they were so strong and so specific that I couldn't really deny them. Like, for example, one of them was the day of his wake. I had stayed up with him all night in the room and wrote him letters. I cried. I pulled cards. I held him. It was a very precious time because I knew I was never going to see his physical self like that again. And even though he wasn't exactly like he should have been, it was still a precious time. And I'm hysterically crying because I know the family's going to wake up soon, and that was going to be the end of that time we had alone. And I'm like seriously crying now, right? And all of a sudden, and I'm asking, like, I'm begging, I'm like, what is your sign going to be to me? Like, what what is it going to be? And I'm thinking like rainbows, coins, feathers, like, I don't know, right? And I heard just inside my own head start to laugh as I'm hysterical crying, which is, I've never experienced that before. I heard this laughing kind of voice, and it said, well, mommy, it's music, of course. And I remember taking like kind of a step back and going, what was that? How am I laughing? And like, I can't be laughing right now. I have never addressed myself as mommy in my own thoughts ever. And so, and the reason he said music was because at the wake the night before, I had been playing a Spotify playlist that I had played during his birth, and there was about 80 songs. They were all very spiritual because I had actually been running a spiritual course on manifestation while I was pregnant for my doTERRA team, and so I had all those songs that he was born to during my labor. I had that playing in the background, and there was a song on there by someone called Jay Jagdeesh, and it's In Dreams. And it wasn't written as a mother losing a child, but my God, it does sound like a mother losing a child. It's so much so that in the lost mom spirit baby community, that song it's pretty famous actually. Now I didn't know that when I put it on the spiritual playlist that I played during his birth. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put it on, because actually, when I listened to the lyrics, I was like, "How did that get on my birth playlist?" Like, and someone in the room, one of my, I think it was my sister, said to me, "Where did you ever get such a song like that?" And I was like, "I didn't even know that was on the playlist. It came on shuffle, right?" So then an hour had gone by, and my husband had actually been having a big car. Our car broke down. He had to rent a car to get home to the wake because he had gone to run an errand that morning. So of course that was even more upsetting for everyone. But when he came in, I hadn't looked into the coffin yet at my son. I just couldn't bring myself to do that at that point. And he had asked everybody to leave the room, and he held my arm. And as I got up to look into my son again, that same song came on at the exact moment when I stood up to look at him. And I remember just feeling like this deep sense of peace, because it's a really beautiful, soothing song about how much you love your child and letting them go. And I think the songwriter originally wrote it about herself as her own inner child, but the lyrics really would speak to a grieving mother. Um, so when I heard that telepathic message the next morning with, "Oh, mommy, it's music, of course," and the laughing, I was like, oh my God, what is going on? Right? And that kind of got me through the rest of the wake, because we had to move to my mother-in-law's house for the second night of the wake then before the funeral. And it was literally the hardest thing I've ever had to do. That whole week was just brutal. And those little voices that I was getting, the little messages, the musical things, and there was other ones, they got me through the worst period of my life. And so when all that kind of calmed down, it was like the second week, I had met another friend of mine through doTERRA actually had asked me, would I be open to getting a blessing from someone of the Mormon faith? And she's a really good friend and I trust her. And I said, okay, well, as long as he's not like going to try to convert me to Mormon or something, like joking, right? But obviously I'm thinking, why would someone want to call all the way to my house? But she was like, oh, no, no, not at all, Linda. And I was like, okay. So she sent this man, and he was one of the most beautiful people I've ever met. Loving, kind, wise. he told me a bunch of stories that just blew me away, opened me up spiritually. And he told me about how he would get messages and downloads from God and angels and people in spirit that he loved, and how to tell the difference between them, your own egoic thoughts, and the bad spirits, because they are also around putting these dark thoughts into our minds. And so he really told me all about that, and that was when I really started to be like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not just desperate and imagining this, maybe I'm not losing my mind. And then little by little I would meet more and more people in the spiritual community that, had similar experiences, and it grew my confidence, and I kept believing in it. I kept getting more and more of these beautiful messages and connections to my son and to the angels, and kept going with my spiritual studies. I like I said, I threw myself into course after course that year, because that was the only thing I could do to keep my mind in a really high vibe place, to keep me moving forward instead of like getting sucked into like a really low place. I had obviously bad periods as well, um, but that really did help an awful lot. But like I said, I have a list of the courses I did here. I did tarot courses, angel courses, astrology courses, numerology, Bosch flowers, 3 energy works, mediumship, and intuitive painting. So quite a lot for a grieving mother who was also trying to sell her house, and we had moved in with my dad, and we were trying to sell his house so that we could buy a bigger house, and it was stressful. It was really like on top of everything else. My dad, his health had deteriorated really bad, and he needed like full time care. So what we did was we put money towards a bigger house on top of what he had. And so we were very blessed that that all worked out, and we didn't have to rent anymore, and that I didn't have to worry about my father. And um, I knew when we found the house that we got that it was the right one. It was all very spiritually guided by my son, and there's no way we would have got this house because we got a really good house for the budget we had. There's just no way it would just not have happened. So sometimes, you do get a gift to help you, even when you've been through such a awful, awful period in your life. Um, you can never stop believing in good things are possible, and keeping the faith that life can get better, can get easier. Um, but yeah, I say from all those listed things, the Akashic Records has been the one that's really coming out in the front. That I'm on year 2 of a course now. I'm actually doing it with Vanessa Jean Boscarella Ovens, the one that wrote the beautiful book, Gifts of the Essential Oils with Adam Barley. And so I've been working with her in like a women's circle mentorship, learning the Akashic Records. I'm on year 2 now. We're learning to read for other people. And it's now that we're learning to read for other people that I'm really like, wow, like this is incredible. Like I honestly thought this was going to be the least strong of the ones I listed, because I thought I'm never going to be able to do that. Like how would I know how would I be able to do that? It sounds too out there. Actually, I should say what it is, because probably a lot of listeners that have never heard of it. 'Cause I had never heard of it until 2021. And that kind of thing. When the first time I heard someone mention the Akashic Records, it was like my spirit just went, "What's that? What is that? I need to know about that right now. I want to book in a session. I want to learn. I want to do a course." Like you just know, you kind of get like a whoa, such a pulling, right? It was like me seeing the picture of Dublin, and going, "Oh, my spirit wants that," right? So, and then next thing I'm seeing the word everywhere. It's like it's all I see then. But basically the Akashic Records is supposed to be like, people would often say it's like the library of everything that's ever happened, every thought, every action of a soul for all of its lives. So obviously it's heavily um believed, part of it would be that we have all these past lives as well, and that our soul is on an evolutionary journey to eventually becoming the perfect blueprint of what we can be in the Akasha field. And so that's why sometimes there are people who have to go through a lot of challenges in life, and you're looking at them or yourself and going, why am I going through all of this? And my friend over there, she's had a perfect childhood, she's got a great marriage, she's had just really no trials or tribulations. Well, there's a good reason for that. It's because in this incarnation you are here to grow. You're being pushed, you are here to evolve. So there'll be a great gift for you when you come through the other side of that adversity. And maybe someone else, they're on a break lifetime. They had a tough one in the last life, and now they just need to kind of chill, right? Because they don't want too many bad lives in a row. So that's great. It's a whole new way of looking at, the challenges that we are here to overcome, and feel like they're all blessings. Um, so yeah, I got really into looking into past lives, Dolores Cannon, all of her work with QHHT, read many of her books, a big lover of her. I think down the road I might do QHHT with Akashic Records. I feel like that's the work I want to really hone in on. And like looking at, if you kind of compare what's coming through in an Akashic Records reading to what's coming through in a QHHT session, I just think that is so profound, because now you're triangulating two different modalities, and when there's similarities coming out, how could you explain that in any other way? That to me is like something I could do a PhD in. I could go in the intellectual route with that. It's so fascinating to me. Um,
What's
so yeah,
what's a
Akashic Records.
QH? Sorry, what's a QHHT?
Okay,
What
so
does that mean?
basically, that's a type of hypnosis,
Okay,
and it's quantum healing hypnosis technique. It comes
okay,
directly from Dolores Cannon. Dolores Cannon would be one of the top ever experts in past life regression hypnosis. You have Dr. Brian Wise, he'd also be very well known, but Dolores kind of made her own thing, QHHT. Um, so yeah, it's like her work is some of the most scientifically validating spiritual stuff I've ever come across, because she will basically put someone under hypnosis. One of the books I read for her was called Jesus of the Essenes, and this young girl, she's like, I think 16, she dropped out of high school, working class family, not very well educated, right? And she started to do QHHT sessions with Dolores to help her uncover some challenges she was having. And what was coming through was this past life that she had as an Essene, which is like one of the ancient Jewish subcultures, I guess you could say, around the time of when Jesus was born. They're very mystical, very secretive. There's not a whole lot of information about them. But some people would say that Jesus was one of the Essenes, and so was Mary, and so was the grandmother Anna. So they were born into a very special community because they had a purpose to come to do for humanity, right? So, anyways, this lady, she's under hypnosis, and she starts telling Dolores over many sessions all about the Essenes, the names, the language, the food, all these things. And Dolores purposely didn't research anything. She didn't want it to cloud her own work with this woman. But when the work had finished, she went then and checked everything that the girl had been saying, and it was all perfectly accurate. And like, how could a 16-year-old from, like, I think the deep south in America with no education know any of those things? It's like impossible, right? So so let's say she was doing that QHHT work with her to uncover this this sort of information. And then let's say that girl went to another lady who was brilliant at reading the Akashic records, but had no information about what had happened during her QHHT. And then let's say that the Akashic records were saying the same thing. I just think that would be extremely fascinating, because that's something coming from that woman under hypnosis, and something coming from a totally different person by accessing the records. That would really be great triangulation of data to prove some of this even more. But even without that, I think doing QHHT on someone and getting that information, I just don't think there's anything more convincing to me from past lives or spiritual things. Like, I just don't see any other way that that information would come out of somebody when they're under hypnosis. So, and yeah, so there was another thing that's kind of connected to all that. So you've probably heard about Atlantis, right? The lost civilization.
I've heard a little bit about it, but I don't know a lot about it.
Okay, well, it's not like I used to think it had something to do with people that lived under the sea or something. I remember thinking it was like a real sea thing, but no. As I started when I was pregnant with my son Shay, actually, and when we were going through such a tough time with my health and the landlord and all that, I started to get really into reading books about Atlantis. Actually, Diana Cooper was one of my favorite authors to read, and it was I didn't know if I believed it at the time because it does sound very fantasy kind of based, but it was just so soothing. It was like just to imagine that there was ever a place like that, or that we might be now moving into a golden age similar to Atlantis, which is what a lot of the people say, which is why we're going through all this turbulence because we're trying to move into another level of consciousness. But basically, the people of Atlantis were supposed to have been here before the first civilization on record, like the Sumerians, and they would have come from, I think, something to do with like extraterrestrials that had planted them on Earth or something like that. But they had way more like spiritual powers. They were completely telepathic, so they could send each other messages wherever they were. They were very loving. They would literally just love to do art and listen to music and cook beautiful food. There was no violence. The connection they had to animals was just unbelievable. Like, so it just sounds like this just out of the world utopia, right? And then unfortunately something came into the consciousness there and it kind of got really bad very quickly. And then apparently there was this huge explosion and the whole civilization, the continent, it just went underwater. And apparently, a few of the people survived, got out of there, made their way over to ancient Egypt, and they were the ones that started the Egyptian culture and helped build the pyramids and do all the things that they could never understand. A normal human wouldn't have been able to do that. So where did they get that information or those abilities? Apparently, it was supposed to come from the ancient Atlanteans. So it all sounds pretty out there and hard to get your head around, and fantasy and all of that, right? Um, but like I say, why couldn't that be true if like there's supposed to be angels and Jesus and all these other things that we just believe because we've been told that from when we were kids?
One of Dolores's kind of students has written one, I think even two books now. Her name is Sarah Breskman. I had originally seen her on Gaia TV, and I think her book is called A Hypnotist's Journey to Atlantis or something similar to that. And when I was kind of digging deeper into this, she was saying a lot of the same things from her research that was come through from the Sumerian tablets, which is just amazing. And the Sumerian tablets were one of, I think, the most ancient texts. I think the Sumerian culture was like the very, very first human culture, civilization, I should say, on record. So they had these tablets where they, like, I think they're made of stone that they wrote all this stuff into. And it was all about the fact that humans came from aliens, right? Something to that degree. I think they called them the Annunaki or something like that. And so the first Bible, I think the Old Testament, apparently that's maybe based on these aliens that kind of help set up the human race. And that also explains why we jumped. Do you know the way in the evolution theory our brains jumped in a way that they cannot explain how we could have possibly went from Neanderthal to human in such a short space of time. But the Sumerian tablets and this theory about the Annunaki and all the stuff that's been uncovered in the QHHT research would explain that perfectly well. And it would explain why the Old Testament was so harsh. It's like, that's the one part of the Bible that I really can't get behind. It's just so harsh. I'm like, I don't think any sort of divine being would be speaking like that or doing those things. I just can't, right? So maybe if it was some other God-like thing, that the people got it confused, and that would explain the harshness and all of that, and that would explain why when Jesus came down, he was trying to bring more loving, higher state of consciousness and change the trajectory of what we were evolving into as a human race. I think it was pretty bad when he was alive. So anyways, I didn't mean to go into all these tangents, but I find them really fascinating theories. I keep an open mind. I have a belief that I know nothing for sure. I know nothing for sure. So, I mean, all I can do is go with the things that feel good, and feel light is usually where I feel truth. And if I feel something heavy and dense, then I'm like, that's not my truth. So I'll move away from that. So yeah, that's kind of why I think I started studying Edgar Cayce a lot as well. Edgar Cayce was one of the most famous ever psychics. He would have been the one that popularized the Akashic Records and did, like, I think a daily Akashic Record session for, I don't remember years, but I think he did like 14,000 readings and predicted so many things and gave so much knowledge to what we have, including my favorite crystal of all time, which I didn't know at the time when it became my favorite crystal, but it's called Larimar. I don't know if you can see it there.
I can. Is it a light blue colour?
Yeah, it kind of looks like the sea.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
So nice.
I got really drawn to this when I was pregnant with my son. I think it's my son in Spirit's favorite crystal. And I was like, oh my God, it just really captured me. I saw it on Instagram one day, and I asked the lady about it, and it was pretty expensive for the size, and more than I would have been used to paying for crystals. And then she explained, oh, well, it's Larimar. And I went researching it, and apparently Larimar is supposed to be the last connection we have to Atlantis. And Edgar Cayce, who died in the earlier part of the 1900s, I think he died around 1932, he had predicted from accessing the records that there would be a blue stone found in the Caribbean that would look like the sea, and that would be the last stone from Atlantis. And so, of course, I think it was in the 70s, they found Larimar crystal in the Dominican Republic, and it's, it kind of made one of his predictions completely come true. And they called it Larimar, I think, because it was the girl, his daughter, the guy who discovered it, his daughter was called Larissa, and then Mar meaning sea. So Larimar. But anyways, it's become a really popular crystal now, but it's quite rare. So if you ever see it, buy it, because eventually you won't be able to get it. And it actually got delivered to my house, even though I had ordered it months before. It was delivered to my house the day before I was induced with Jay. And so I held a piece of Larimar while he was being born. And it always reminds me of him, his energy, and maybe the things he came here to open my mind to and remind my soul of. So I always have a piece of it on, whether it's this ring or a necklace or something like that. I've had 2 birthdays since he transitioned, and on both birthdays, he led me to a shop where there was like a very rare piece of Larimar, and I was like, so it's his special crystal, and it's a way I connect with his energy. But yes, so that's kind of my interest in all of the Akashic Records, past lives, Atlantis, a theory of where we came from as humans that actually makes more sense to me than the Bible ever did. And yeah, I think I was going to say something else, but I've probably gone on a total tangent now, so maybe you have another question for me.
I do. And at the same time, I just really want to honour the journey of growth that you've been through. As a woman, I cannot begin to imagine the depth of grief and just depth of feeling that you must have experienced when you were going through the loss of your son. And I really just want to honour you as an incredible person for being able to find the lightness and the grace to be able to experience that transition in the way that you have. and of really allowing yourself to let his spirit guide you through that process of transitioning into a life without him here in physical form with you. I just really want to honour you for that, for the way in which you've allowed that to be a tool of growth for you in your spiritual exploration. And it makes complete sense to me that you would want to explore all of the spiritual knowledge that feels aligned with what feels right and good for you. I can completely understand the way in which you've explored that particular path for yourself and the knowledge that you feel like you want to understand and learn for yourself. So I just really want to honour your bravery, your courage, your insight, and the way in which you are using this experience to allow yourself to open up to the essence of spirituality and being who you are. And I don't have a lot of knowledge of the Akashic Records myself. What it reminds me of is in Buddhist tradition, in the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, they believe that the path of enlightenment for the Buddhist is to become enlightened, to liberate themselves from suffering, and they become what's called a bodhisattva. And the purpose of becoming a bodhisattva is to use your spiritual knowledge to help to liberate others from suffering. And I was reminded of that when you were talking about how the purpose of understanding and using the Akashic Records is so that we can become the blueprint of who we could be. And it just reminded me of that philosophy as well, that all of spirituality, all of the spiritual knowledge and understanding that we have and explore is at its core a way in which we can become the best that we can be in this life, to become the blueprint of who we actually are, the divine beings that we actually are. And so it's wonderful that in your experience of growth, you are exploring that and finding what it is for you that is allowing you to be and become the best that you can be in this incarnation of who you are as a human being on earth at this time. I just really want to honour that. And I did have one more question actually, and it was around your personal spiritual awakening. So you mentioned having a spiritual awakening previous to the transition that you went through with your son, and I wondered if you could just touch a little bit more on what that was for you and how that felt and how that emerged into your life.
Sure, yeah. So I have, as I told you, I had 7 older brothers and sisters, and one of my brothers, he was like 26 years older than me, right? But he was born as quite a sick child, very sick baby, had to have numerous operations in the 1950s in London, and he lived to be into his 50s. He was like a father figure to me because he was so much older, but he was a really strong influence in my life as a child. Spent a lot of time with him. Actually, I think he bought me my first set of crystals, which was one of my favorite toys I played with as a kid. Over and over, I used to pretend I had a jewelry shop, but it wasn't until like recently I remember I was like, oh my god, it was my brother that actually bought me those crystals, and I actually gave crystals out as my wedding favors, even though I wasn't that spiritual. I guess I was, but it just wasn't like, at the forefront of my life at the time. But my brother was very spiritual. He actually almost joined the priesthood at one point, and I think he could see auras and he had some abilities. Not that he ever discussed that with us, but I kind of intuitively knew that about him, and it's come through in some mediumship readings since. But anyways, he passed away in 2009, and I've had certain experiences over that decade that came afterwards where I felt him around, or music would come on. His favorite band was Pink Floyd, and so I would feel him around, but I didn't really know much about it, right? But he was kind of like gently always reminding me of his presence and all of that, and more so me than anyone else in my family, except maybe my mother. And then one day in 2019, so I was pregnant with my second son, which, by the way, women are always more psychically connected when they're pregnant, and most of the time we don't realize that. I didn't realize that until after I lost the baby, because then I started researching spirit babies and all of that, which was a mind-blowing field of knowledge that I had no awareness of as a 3-time mother. So for any new mothers or women expecting babies that ever listen to this, please buy the book Spirit Babies by Walter McKetchin and look into that, because looking back on my pregnancy with Jay, and even the one with my second son Ryan, I was spiritually connected in a way that I had never been before. I was getting messages, I was getting downloads, I was getting these intuitive nudges, probably from the spirit baby that I was carrying. And I was just thinking, oh, that's just me. I just all of a sudden decided to start painting for no reason. You also think that you've come up with their name, but, they probably put that into your head because they have a past life reason of why they want that name. So it's just really cool if you can tap into that while you're pregnant, because you have so much fun with it and connect to your spirit baby while they're in your womb. But, so I'm pregnant with my second son, and I was having some digestive challenges during the pregnancy, which were heightened from my regular digestive challenges that I had for years before that. Anyway, so I buy this book on Amazon, and it's called, it's by the medical medium. I can't remember what it was called. Something to do with celery juice. Anyways, and it's just, again, one of those times where I intuitively think, I'm going to buy that book. I had no idea why I was buying it. Didn't research who the author was. Just bought it on my Kindle. I had just got a new Kindle. I was like, I'll get a few books. So I start reading the book that night in bed with my husband, and I say to him, you know what? This is some of the best nutritional advice I think I've ever read. Because, I get so disheartened when I can't make sense of the vegans versus the paleo people versus that is just also conflicting and drives me a little bit mad. So this actually made really good sense. I was resonating with it. Then I looked at the author, and it was this guy called the medical medium, who basically was channeling the information from spirits. And I burst out laughing, and I said to my husband, oh my God, it's gotten so bad I'm resorting to relying on a guy who's getting information from dead people. And my husband laughed at me, and it just felt really silly, but I was like, I'm going to keep going with it. And in the end, I actually did do the celery juice from the book for about 2 years and completely got rid of all my digestive problems to this day. Have not had any. So he definitely was right on the celery juice. He's right on a lot of things. I don't think he's right on everything, but then again, I don't think any human is right on anything. So you pick and choose what resonates and feels right for you, right? But the celery juice definitely, I found bang on what he said from spirit, that it has these special salts that go in and just rip out all the pathogens and bacteria and nasties in your digestive tract. So anyways, the next day I get up, and I had a trade show in Dublin, and I'm wearing this really pretty pastel blue and yellow poncho over my little bump. And I'm driving in the car, and I put on my favorite podcast at the time, which was The Lifestylist. It's all about health and wellness and biohacking and a bit of spirituality. So I have that on in the car. And next thing, he's got this guest on who's a channeler. He's channeling some spirits, And I'm like, oh, that's odd. Another medium thing in the space of 12 hours. How bizarre. So I listened to the podcast, and it's just quite interesting. I pull up my car, and I get parked, and I think I'm putting on a bit of makeup before I go into the event in my car. And next thing, this bird lands right on my window of the car, looks me right in the eye, it felt like it went on for 5 minutes, but it probably only was like 60 seconds. But it was a very prolonged experience where this bird looked into my soul. And it wasn't a regular bird, it was a blue tit. And I don't know if you've ever seen a blue tit. They are native to Europe. But they look like something that should be in a pet shop or in somebody's home because they're extremely bright blue and yellow. They look like a parakeet. I had never seen a bird in Ireland, a wild bird, with those vibrant kind of tropical colours like that. So at first I was like, oh God, somebody's pet has got out the window and it's on my windowsill, you know? And I was like, this is really bizarre. But then I realised that the top I was wearing was mirroring his colours. So I had the same colours on me. So it was just a very profound experience. This bird staring at me like that. Really, I connected with him, right? And I often think that when a wild animal goes out of its path and you feel this strong connection, that's almost always a spiritual sign. They're there to show you something if you take notice of it. And it doesn't even have to be as extreme as that, but like even if a wild fox walks out in front of your car and kind of looks at you for a minute, like that's unusual. You know, you should take note, go and look up what does that mean. But this particularly felt really strong. So anyways, I finished putting on my makeup. I go into the event and I set up my doTERRA oils, and this lady comes up to me, this really beautiful lady. She's actually someone I follow now, but her name is Sinead Bahora, and she's like an intuitive healer. She's written, I think she's got some oracle decks now, and she's really cool. So anyways, she happened to walk up to my table and she's like, oh, I love doTERRA and I've often thought about bringing it into my business. And I'm like, oh, that's cool, what do you do? And she's like, she goes, I'm a medium. And I think I actually like burst out laughing because I was like, oh, stop it. Like, this is too much. The book, the podcast, the bird, now this woman. So I said to her, oh my God, you're like the third reference to a medium I've heard in 12 hours. And then I told her all about the bird. And she grabbed my arm and she was like, oh, darling, somebody from the other side is probably trying to get a message through to you. And I was like, really? Oh my God. And at first I got a little bit like, what does that mean, you know? And then I was like, it must be my brother, because he's the only one in spirit that would be that probably strong trying to get me a message. So that was fine. I drive home that evening, and I've had enough with the spiritual stuff for the day. So I'm like, let me just put on a good old business podcast. So I put on Marie Forleo, who's like a marketing genius, right? So I'm listening to her podcast, and doesn't she have Gabby Bernstein on, who's a spiritual teacher and author? I don't know how I picked that episode, but that's what the universe wanted, right? So they start talking about getting signs from spirit and all this kind of spiritual stuff. And it's not something I'm used to listening to at that point, right? Oh yeah, that's interesting. And then they started talking about Abraham Hicks. And I'm like, oh yeah, this Abraham Hicks. I've been hearing this name for a while, and I thought it was a guy who was like a personal development speaker. So anyways, they're talking about it, and then I realized Abraham Hicks is not a man. It's a woman called Esther Hicks who channels a group of spirits who refer to themselves as Abraham. So here we go again. Now I'm getting another channeled thing that's coming through. But even crazier than that, Abraham Hicks is the original inspiration for the book and the movie The Secret. But they took her out, Esther, Abraham, whatever you want to call her. They took her out of the book and they took her out of the movie because Rhonda Byrne felt that she was too, even though she had gone, I think, on one of Esther Hicks' cruises and had experienced the whole thing and said, I have to write a book about this. And this is how she came up with The Secret. But she ended up probably really hurting for Esther's feelings and cutting her out at the last minute, even though she'd filmed everything, because she thought Esther Hicks was too out there for the public at that point. And she's probably right, you know, because you've got to remember the secret, the beauty of The Secret, which was also the weakness of The Secret, was that it appealed to a wide mass audience. It was in every country in the world, like even Papua New Guinea, right? So like everybody had access to The Secret because she kept it for a mass audience. in the same way, it was a little bit watered down and a little bit simplistic to what it could have been. But then if she'd gone too heavy with showing how it was from channeled information, I don't know if a mass market would have had any resonance with that. Like, because I remember even me, this was in 2019, I was even like, whoa, this is some crazy stuff. You expect me to believe that this woman is hearing all these things from another dimension? It was hard to get my head around at first. But obviously, because The Secret was my doorway to personal development and thus such spiritual development, I was very fascinated with the fact that that day ended on Abraham Hicks. And so I started to read Abraham Hicks' books and listen to her YouTube clips and do her meditations, and got really into like her ideas about manifestation. It was like a whole nother level of what I knew manifestation to be about. Like, it was all about whatever you've come here on earth to do, to feel joy, because that's what we're here. We're here to actually create and feel joy. Whatever you want, whatever you're looking to manifest, it's already there in this vortex, she calls it. And all you have to do is you have to match the frequency to that vortex in order to attract it in. And I thought, this is so interesting. So then that means in order to get into that frequency, to get to the same resonance of the vortex, you can do any spiritual practice to bring you there. It doesn't have to be meditation, prayer, and yoga, which, for years I thought, well, I don't have a spiritual practice. I don't really do those three things. So I just said, I'm not a very spiritual person. But I knew I loved to journal. I loved to pull oracle cards. I liked to talk to the angels. But to me, that wasn't a spiritual practice, because that's what I felt society would have said. But when I listened to Abraham Hicks, I realized that anything that brings me great joy and connection to the divine is a spiritual practice. So gardening, painting, spending quality time with my family and my pets, these are all spiritual practices. And so I started to craft a spiritual practice that worked for me. And that became getting up at 6 a.m., always starting with an essential oil, because when I put the oil onto my body and I inhale it into my limbic system, I am now changing the frequency of my body. I am now uplifting my emotions. I'm getting closer to the vortex. I'm getting closer to being in my body and not so much in my head. And I would always just do like a quick gratitude practice as I was taking like 10, 15 breaths of the oil. By practicing gratitude, I'm getting closer into the vortex. So now before I start a spiritual practice, I've already raised my frequency and my emotions. And then I would do journaling and oracle cards. And sometimes I would do a little visualization at the end. And this was the course I started to teach all of my team for free. I was like, listen, do you want to do this with me? Because we were all so depressed from the COVID lockdown in Ireland. It's 10 months long. It was crazy here. So I started to get on to Zoom calls and just share with the girls what I was doing. And it really worked for them. But in actual fact, as I did that and I progressed with that, that was what was preparing me for the loss of my child, because I now had this very distinct spiritual practice that I knew could pull me out of a depression. Even a depression as intense as what grief was, right? And I started to realize there's like an old Indian proverb. I think I heard it from one of the doTERRA leaders years ago. I'm actually doing a painting of it right now. Last night I was working on it because it's so important to me. And I think that there's different iterations of this for everybody, but you just got to find the one that resonates with you the most. So this Indian proverb is like, there was a young, when I say Indian, I actually mean Native American, like not Indian from Asia. But there was a Native American young guy, and he asked his grandfather, he said, Granddad, there's a bad wolf on one of my shoulders and there's a good wolf on my other shoulder. And I'm scared which of them is going to win out over me. They're making me do things. And the grandfather was like, well, that's easy, son. All you have to do is feed the right wolf and starve the other wolf. And he was like, oh, okay. So he started to feed the good wolf, and the good wolf took over, helping him to live a really happy, positive, spiritually aligned life. Starve the bad wolf. So that was a big analogy for me in the early parts of my grief, where I was like, if you don't feed the good wolf, Linda, you're going to go down with a ton of bricks. So feeding the good wolf to me was doing my spiritual courses, reading my books, doing my spiritual practices in the morning, not drinking as much wine at the weekends to drown my sorrows, not eating as much takeaway food and just whatever quick comfort I could do to get me through a really bad moment or a bad day. Getting out of bed, showering, like simple things that people would take for granted. But when you're literally really battling one of the toughest periods of your life, those are the things that are actually really hard to do. Eat healthy, shower, clean your room, get out of bed, not surround yourself with fear-driven TV or gossipy friends or whatever, right? So I had made a list of all the things I could do to feed the good wolf. I even, Shannyn, went and bought a big white golden retriever because she was a daily reminder for me to feed the good wolf, take her for a walk, get out of the house, remind us all that there was still beauty to be found in this life. She was such a healing dog sent to me by my son and the angels. But so that was my big analogy. That would, like, as soon as I felt myself slipping back into a bad place, and I still slip into bad places all the time. It's a constant roller coaster with the grief. But I know what to do. I'm like, okay, Linda, which wolf are you feeding? It's very simple. If you want to snap out of this, you just go back to feeding the good wolf. And as soon as I start to do that, Shannyn, using my oils, taking my supplements, drinking more water, going to bed early, avoiding my phone, scrolling, these are all things that help me go outside, take a walk in nature, help me go back to the white wolf, right? Or the good wolf, I should say. So what was I going to say about that? There was one last point I had about it. Oh yeah, so I was actually doing an Akashic Records reading for somebody the other day, and it came really clear to me what was coming through from the record keepers was this person needed to manage their emotions like water. So water could either get stagnant into a little puddle, which would pool and have no flow, and bacteria and all sorts of things could start to grow in that water and make it cloudy, right? Or you could mirror yourself on the flow of a river, which has energy and will go around its obstacles and keeps itself crystal clean and kind of beautiful, vibrant river. And this is what came through in the records as I was telling this person, and they said, oh my God, I've been obsessed with rivers my whole life. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And after the session, I said, so maybe, you should be around rivers more, or keep thinking of those two images in your head and which way, have a list of activities of which type of water would be aligned to which activity you do in your life, just like me and the good and the bad wolf, right? So, and that just made me realize there's probably all different analogies for people that would resonate. For me, it's animals, because I love animals. Like, I'd love to think of the good and the bad wolf in my head. They're so beautiful. Water wouldn't do it for me. It's just not strong enough. But for this person, they're not a big animal lover. Water is what they felt resonated with them. So, yeah, I think finding something that's constantly reminding you to make the healthier choices would get you out of any struggle with mental health, to a degree, obviously, unless it's like something very, very serious. For most mental health issues, this would be a great help to someone. So yeah, but anyways, all of that came from the Abraham Hicks work that I was doing, which all came from that day in 2019. And it was that day in 2019 that started to make me really aware that my brother in spirit was sending me messages like that bird. And then I had a visitation dream from my brother about a month before I got pregnant with Jay. And it was the most beautiful, peaceful thing I had ever experienced in my sleep. But I woke up and I was hysterically crying. And my husband was like, what is going on? You know, and I said, I just saw my brother. Like, it was like the realest thing I've ever felt in a dream. He was just right there. And my husband probably thought I was like losing it, but I knew that it was like something, not just a dream, right? So I remember like looking it up, and I found out, oh, there's these things called visitation dreams, when you can actually, your spirit can meet another spirit, and you'll remember it, and it feels very like real life. And it's always positive. It's never scary. It's never guilt-inducing or fearful. Like, if it is, then it's more of just a dream. And it usually happens in like a white space or a corridor or like an airport lounge or somewhere like that. And this is exactly like my dream. And that was another thing that kind of like, I was like, wow, that's the most amazing thing that I got to see my brother in the spirit world. And then, I don't know, it was like another week or two later, the best animal I've ever had was this cat called Mush. And he came into my life when another period, which was really challenging, right before I met my husband, actually, when I was trying to get away from an abusive relationship that had gone on way too long. And so this cat came into my life, and we had such a soul connection. And I actually ended up being a pedigree cat breeder because I wanted to do that since I was a little girl. And I brought him to the cat shows, and I kept 2 of his kittens. I became the crazy cat lady. But this cat was like unbelievable, right? And so I go downstairs one morning, and I go to feed him his breakfast, and he's like stretched out on the kitchen floor. And I go to rub his belly, and he's cold, and he's stiff, and he's dead. And I got like a really bad shock because he wasn't even that old. He was like 10. He was pretty, like, perfectly healthy. He had shown no signs of sickness or any sort of thing like that. And yeah, I had such a bad trauma from that. I went into a deep depression for like a month. Couldn't get out of bed, couldn't eat, didn't want to talk to anybody. And it was the way I found him as well. Like, if I had to bring him to the vet or anything else, but that was just horrible. But I honestly believe that that had to happen to prepare me a little bit more for the grief that was coming, the trauma that was coming, because I had to do a lot of work around losing him and dealing with the grief to get me to have a look at. And I really think that's one of the major things that pets do for us, is because they don't live that long compared to us as humans. They give us tastes of grief and these little things that, so that when we do go through something within our own family and friends, we have a little bit of experience with it, a little bit of like, okay, I know I got through this before, this is what I did, or whatever. That's one of their greatest gifts to us. So that really kind of cracked me open as well. And I remember actually at that time, again, I intuitively bought this book on Amazon, and it was something, I think it was Bosch Flower Remedies for Empaths. And I think the word empath caught my attention because I kind of realized I am one. And so I buy the book, and I'd often buy books and don't read them. I'm a terror, like, if I have ADHD, I gotta buy this book and that book, and then I don't read them. But I read this book. I was in such a depression, I didn't get out of bed. All I had time to do was read books. So I read the book anyways, and I'm like, okay. So I go and I buy a set of Bosch flowers. Now, I had never really thought much of them. I tried Rescue Remedy before. I didn't really see any massive improvement in it. But then I realized from reading the book that that's not what Bosch or Rescue Remedies are for. People just use it totally the wrong way. A rescue remedy is for an emergency. It's for a tragedy, a death, a car accident, really, really bad news, something really, heavy. That's what a rescue remedy is for. It's not for day-to-day stress and anxiety, as people misuse it. There's much, much better Bosch flower remedies for your day-to-day emotional things. So anyways, I got the set of oils, and then I got another book which had a questionnaire in it. What emotions are you experiencing? Very detailed. And so I was able to pick what remedies I needed for that. And at the time, my second son was also going through some really crazy stuff. As a 1-year-old, he would like bang his head off the floor or the wall if he was frustrated. Let's say he didn't get a cookie or I couldn't pick him up because I had hot food in my hand. He would just go over and bang his head off the wall, and it was like so upsetting, scary, right? He's a Leo the lion. He's real strong emotions. So I'm like, okay, I pick out the remedies for my depression with the grief from the cat. And then I picked out remedies for my son from a children's book that I bought. His was so simple. Oh my God, so simple. Kids are just the easiest to pick out remedies for because they don't have that many emotions. There's like 10 remedies for them. You just pick 2 or 3. So I give him the remedy for 3 days, and it said in the book, if after 3 days you don't see an improvement, you've got the wrong one, change it. Whereas for a grown-up, there's more like, I think, 38 remedies, and if you don't see an improvement after a couple of weeks, you need to adjust. So anyways, we both take the remedies. I completely snap out of my depression within a week. My son never, ever banged his head off of any surface after that 3 days. My husband was shocked. He was like, what did you do to the baby? Like, to get him to stop doing that. I'm like, these Bosch flowers, that's the box there. So he was like, they're amazing. I was like, I know. And anything that could lift me out of grief like that was just, oh my God. Now, I did take them after I lost my son, and maybe they did help a bit, but I think I was avoiding them because I was so traumatized and sad about my son. There was periods where I didn't want to take the oils. I didn't want to take the Bosch flowers. I don't want to take my CBD. I don't want to do anything because I wanted to just feel the feels and process the heavy of that grief. And then there was other periods where I would be like, oh my God, give me all my natural plant tools. I need it all, right? And all my spiritual stuff. So it was always kind of up and down. But you'll know when you're slipping into a depression, it's usually when you avoid using your tools and doing the things that kind of make you feel better. You actually will repel them because you want to wallow in the cloud, the dark cloud, right? So, and that's fine as long as you can eventually go and do the things that will bring you back out of it. So yeah, that was kind of another thing that was a big part of my journey. And I started to look into pet mediums. I remember at that time I joined this group on Facebook called Brent Atwater's Lost Group. I had found her on YouTube, and she had these great videos full of information. Not something I'd ever even thought of in my life, pet mediumship, what was going on. But she taught me some things. I read her books, and it really helped me get through that period. And I also booked a session with a pet medium in the UK. I can't even remember her name, but she was very affordable. And for the first month or 2 after I booked her, I actually couldn't do the session because I felt like it would re-traumatize me. So I asked her, could we just postpone for a little while until I'm actually emotionally ready to even discuss the loss of my cat, which I know would sound crazy to some people, but he was really like family to me. And so I did the session with her after a few months. And this really blew me away as well, because she said, now, did that cat sleep with you every night, like up by your head? And I said, yes, he did. Like, embarrassingly to admit that, but my cat used to literally sleep across my head with his paw clutching my chin and purring on me, like, every night. And she said, okay, yeah, and he didn't sleep with you the night he passed away, no? And I said, no, he didn't. It was weird. I remember, like, calling him a few times to come up to bed, and he didn't, but I had gotten a tooth pulled, like, 2 days before, wasn't feeling well, wasn't feeling myself. So I just said, oh, he's just not in the mood, so I went up to bed. And she said, okay, so he's telling me that he didn't want to sleep with you because he knew he was going to die that night, and that it would have traumatized you to wake up with a dead cat in your bed or even on your head, which it would have completely traumatized me. So he said that he just couldn't do that to you, and that he had an embolism. Now, she had no idea how he died, and she said, oh, and did you pet him thinking he was alive and you discovered he was then dead and you freaked out? And I said, yes. Obviously, I hadn't told her any of those details whatsoever. So it was really like confirming to me that she was communicating with him and that she was getting this information. And it made me feel so much better, you know? So that also was another kind of, okay, this whole spirit world thing, there's really something to it. So it was another part that opened me up and was healing, and that made me believe in spiritual realms and that there is no death, there's just change. So yeah, that's a lot of stuff that happened within a couple of years period for me to have such a belief in all of this. And I really believe very strongly that me and Shay, my son, have had many past lives together, and that this, and in some of those past lives, he also died as a baby, and I didn't make it. I either lost my mind, or I committed suicide, or probably drank too much. I don't know, but I know I probably did not make it through the loss. So in this lifetime, that was one of my greatest tests, to see, could I get through it? And not only that, but could I do something with the pain that would help others? And so I kind of felt that very strongly from the beginning. And I remember it was the second night of the wake, and I was sending out information about the funeral the next day to a few people. And as I'm like on my phone, I got a telepathic message from him, and it was, "Mommy, this is happening to you because you're the strong one, and you will help the other mommies." And I dropped the phone, started crying, but tears of joy. And my husband looked over at me and he was, "What happened? What happened? Did you see a photo of her?" And I said, "No, I just heard Shay telling me something." And he was like, "Wow." And I just explained it to him, and he was, "Oh my God." And I was very blessed that my husband was very open-minded and didn't think I was actually losing my mind. But I knew why my childhood had been so severe, because it had prepared me for difficult things. And sometimes we don't realize it at the time why we're going through such a horrible period or treated so badly, but it does make us more resilient. And so when something even worse comes into your life, you might be able to handle it a lot better than somebody else that hasn't had those sort of challenges. And so I think that's what he meant by "you are the strong one," because I had been through so much already that this wasn't going to break me this time, and that I would be able to use whatever knowledge or gifts that have been given to me to help other mothers. Because other mothers maybe don't have a spiritual outlook. Other mothers don't get to have a shared death experience. They don't get telepathic messages from their son or their brother, or all the litany of things I told you about on the call. Or they mightn't even just have the curiosity or the learning mind that I have. Like, because I have ADHD, I love to learn. I love to study. I have to be always keeping my mind entertained. So that helps me research a lot. And so I learn things at kind of an alarming rate sometimes, whereas other people might not even like to read books. So how would they get this information? Do you know what I mean? So I really think all those things combined is why I have to work with grieving moms, and I have to use all the courses and all the work I've done with the oils and things like the Bosch flowers and stuff like that, to just bring the awareness to the lost mom community that there are things they can do to feel better, that they can do more to feel spiritually connected to their children and the spirit. And I can't think of any greater thing to do with my life, really. So yeah, I'm currently writing 2 books. I go through periods where I'm really good, and then I'm falling off the cliff a bit because life takes over. But the 2 books I'm currently writing, one is for my son. I'm actually writing it with him because I'm co-authoring him on it, because I channel a lot of the information from him. It just flows out of my hands. So I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? But that's all about signs from spirit babies, and we like to call babies who didn't stay on the earthly realm, that go back to spirit, we call them spirit baby guides. Because for a long time I was calling my son a spirit baby angel, and he told me, "I don't like that word, Mom. That's not what I am. I'm not an angel." So I was like, okay. So I was like, well, what are you then? What do you want to be called? And then one day in meditation, he dropped it in, spirit baby guide. So I was like, okay. And so that book is about my journey with him, and spirit baby communication, spirit baby guides, all that kind of thing. That's what that book's going to be about. It'll probably be called Signs from Shay, because again, I think it was in the first 2 months after he transitioned, I was vacuuming. I used to get a lot of telepathic messages from him when I was cleaning the house, because you're busy, you're doing something else, and then all of a sudden the thought would just drop in, and you're like, whoa, where'd that come from? Gardening is another time I get them a lot. But so I got, Mom, I want you to create Signs from Shay. And I was like, I don't know what that means. Is that like a book? Is that a course? What is that? So I decided to create an Instagram page for him called Signs from Shay, just to do something to get the ball rolling and to get my confidence about sharing my spiritual beliefs, my spiritual journey, my healing. Because as I told you before he transitioned, I would not tell anybody about that kind of stuff. I kept it really private. So that was a challenge for me to go and publicly share all those things. But it was brilliant. It's been really healing. It's when I write a post on that account, when I do that, I feel like I'm spending time with my son. So it's a lovely way to connect and to send him back energy, because a friend of mine had said that, make sure you send him energy because he's sending you a lot of energy. It should be reciprocal. So that's a way for me to honor him, send him energy, spend time with him, and help other lost moms. Because so much of the lost mom community isn't that spiritual. It's pretty heavy. I had to leave most of the groups that I initially joined because they were just, not doing me any good. And I was lucky that I was guided to 1 or 2 really good spiritual groups. And so that page for me was always to show hope and light, and I call it grace in grief. Not to spiritually bypass and say, oh, everything's perfect and la-di-da, because that's not what I would intend, obviously. But it wasn't a place for me to go on and just share all the negativity. Let's just put it that way. But be real, but be a place of light and hope as well, because that's what my son definitely would want. So that's the Instagram page I set up for him, and that's the book that I'm writing with him. And then I also felt called to write a book about healing spiritual practices to save yourself from depression, grief, and anxiety. Because that was the journey that I was on before I lost my son, and then it just absolutely intensified when the grief came knocking for me. So just to share with people the litany of things that I had researched, all these different things that are out there and available to people, and then the very simple spiritual practice that I have and how it's evolved. So like now, instead of just doing the oils and the gratitude, the journaling and the card pulling, now I would typically open up my Akashic Records and do a meditation and then journaling. Or I might do my tarot cards while my Akashic Records are open. Or I might do some self-healing, Kundalini Reiki energy healing on myself at the same time, or some IEP. So it's definitely evolved, and it's become a lot more, I guess you could say, complex. But it doesn't have to be. That's not how it started. So that was what the book I started to write was about. My second book that I'm working on. So hopefully I will overcome my ADHD brain and my grief brain, and I will get one of these 2 books written and finished in the near future. And that's my other Instagram page, is Healing Spiritual Practices. And I have decided to set up a little shop in my local town, because I had another crazy spiritual day. The day that all that came about was on the day of the eclipse, the first eclipse that happened about 6 weeks ago, where I had been praying, Shani, for a blue tit to come as a sign, right? For weeks I was praying to my son and my angel guides. Please send me one more blue tit. I have not seen one since that one day in 2019. And I'm praying for weeks and weeks. And then one day I'm sitting in my sunroom with my husband. We're having a cup of coffee. And we're talking about my son and how much we both still miss him and how difficult it can be with the signs that we get, the things that are keeping us going. And as we're talking about it, a blue tit lands at my window, literally as I'm mid-speaking about the signs I'm praying for. So even my husband was like, oh my God, that was crazy. So yeah, and I haven't seen a blue tit anywhere since. I'm like, this is mad. So they're probably my favorite bird in the world. I just think they're like, I've actually saw someone mention that they are spiritual messengers from our loved ones in spirit, as well as a robin obviously would be. But I just think the blue tit is so much more rare. Have you ever seen one, by the way, in the UK?
I don't recall ever seeing one in real life. I feel I might have seen one online or in an image somewhere, but I've never seen one in real life for myself before. I'll have to have a look online when I've finished on the call and see if I can, after looking at an image, recognize it and see if I've ever seen one.
Well, they're a great one to pray for as a sign, because when they do come, they're just so beautiful and so rare to see that you're like, but yeah, that day we had the bird experience. And then there had been, when we decided to buy this house and move to a place called Cork in Ireland, this is where my husband comes from, I was actually the one that said, I think we should move to Cork. And he was like, why Cork? Like, it was really far away from where we were living. And I was like, I've done a few spiritual courses down here in Access Consciousness a couple of years back. And my son is buried here because this is where my husband's family come from, and he's buried with his granddad. And the new doTERRA manufacturing plant was in Cork. So there was a lot of like practical things that was calling me to Cork, right? But then I've now realized since getting here that I have some past life connection to this exact area where I'm living now. And that's why I was feeling drawn to come here, because I'm supposed to. I got this message, I think, from an angel guide, but it was very clear. You're not here for you. You're here for the area. You're coming here to do something for this local area. And there was this mountain that the first day I saw the house, and that was a crazy experience, very spiritual. But anyways, as I drove to the next viewing with my father, we took a mountain pass, which we shouldn't have taken. Google Maps just did some crazy stuff that morning and sent us on this crazy mountain pass. And it was so breathtakingly beautiful. I stopped the car, I took a video. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. I just felt such peace there. And I had been telling my husband about this mountain pass. And he's like, Linda, I don't know where that is. Like, what are you talking about? It's like you're imagining it. I'm like, I have pictures. It did happen. But we had tried driving up there and couldn't find it like 3 times. So I'd kind of given up on it. And then I remembered that there was this holy well that was up somewhere near that mountain pass. And like I said, I'm not very Catholic, but I do believe in a lot of the saints. I really like the whole concept of saints. And I love all ancient Celtic traditions. I've always been drawn to the Celtic kind of ethos, traditions, stuff like that. So the wells in Ireland were actually Celtic, and in the UK, I should say, and parts of France, wherever the Celts were. The wells were a big part of the Celtic tradition because they saw water as sacred. So a well would be a sacred place that they would have gone and done sacred ceremony there, right? So it has a lot of ancient power, like a thin veil place where you feel closer to your ancestors and stuff like that. And then obviously when the UK and Ireland and all the places became Christianized, the church basically turned those holy wells into more like a blessed by Jesus, more of a church thing, because they were quite clever and they knew that if they wanted to get the local Celts to ever join them, they had to embrace some of their tradition as well and make it more like a Celtic Christian thing. Around this is all obviously going on around the time of King Arthur and St. Patrick and Bridget and all this kind of, must have been some magic stuff going on in that period of human history. I think some real mystical things were happening. So anyways, I'm like, well, let's put in the well on the same day that this happened with the bird, right? So I put in the well into the sat nav, and it was a beautiful sunny day, very rare in Cork. And we take a drive up to find the well. And next thing we find the mountain pass. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like where I was trying to find. And I felt the well itself was in such a beautiful place overlooking this panoramic valley. And I just got this really strong, like, memory of myself being there before, like a deja vu. And I had done some past life regression hypnosis later, a couple of weeks later, and I got a very strong, like, you were up on that mountain before, you were picking herbs to bring back to your local community. So I was definitely some sort of plant healer person in that lifetime. And I actually had in the regression, it said that I had a big grey horse named Mush. But I named him after the Mushroom Mountains, which is the mountain that it was. And remember, the cat I had was called Mush, which I thought was really just unbelievable that I would have possibly had him before as a horse. So, because I know our animals reincarnate with us in all our lifetimes to help us through each lifetime as well. So anyways, I had this really strong past life connection to that mountain and to this area. And I started to realize that the reason I was drawn to come to Ireland in the first place as a very young child was because I have past life connection here. I have some soul purpose of coming back to do something here to help the people here. Why? The exact details, I don't know. My friend, a really good friend of mine, she was saying she went to do a QHHT session with one of the people trained in Dolores's technique. And when she came back from the session, I was so excited. I was like, okay, tell me, what came through? Like, all your past life stuff, what did you find out? And she was like, well, my higher self said that I'm not to know those answers because I have to figure it out like a puzzle, because that will be more beneficial to my soul's plan. And at first I was like, what? That's so disappointing. Oh my God, I wanted the juicy bits, you know? But ever since she shared that with me, I've now begun to see my own journey as just like a puzzle. And I'm always looking for these little nuggets, these little spiritual moments or intuitive nudges and things that we can get from doing the kind of things we're talking about, like opening up your records, doing meditation, going to ancient sacred sites that you feel drawn to and seeing like what's coming through, you know? So yeah, that's a good kind of link back to the whole topic that we talked about, why I came here and how it's all making more sense to me now. But I'm still trying to find my way of how do I do that? What are the modalities and setting up? Oh, so that little shop, that's the part I forgot to say. So when we came back down from the well and the mountain, we went to get something to eat in the town, this really small town where we live. And we saw a little shop that said for rent, very reasonable rent. And my husband and I both looked at each other and went, that's interesting. And we had no intention of setting up a little store or anything like that because we've built our doTERRA business pretty much through trade shows and online. But, and again, I don't need to set up a little store for my work. It was more, I wanted to do it to meet the local people and start like a women's circle, a grieving moms circle, teach oil classes, aroma touch, kundalini, reiki, teach IET, get other practitioners and shamanic leaders and sound healing and whatever in the community to this place so that this town will have that as a resource to raise the consciousness and the healing services that are available around here. And so very quickly my life got a little bit crazy because I was like, what? I'm setting up a shop now? Whoa, this is like totally out of nowhere, out of left field, you know? So yeah, we're still just working on getting it painted and set up and ready to open. And I am going on my first ever women's spiritual retreat on Friday. Well, I'm leaving on Saturday, but I go to Dublin on Friday with Vanessa Jean. who wrote The Gifts of the Essential Oils and who's my Akashic Records teacher. So we're going to Cornwall, and the reason I felt so called to go to Cornwall is because I want to tap more into this Celtic fascination that I've had since childhood and do more Akashic record readings on each other. And there's another girl coming that does past life regression. So for my 40th birthday, instead of having a party like my old self would have when I turned 30, I was like, I'd rather spend the money and my time going on this beautiful women's retreat and connecting in with the right people to uncover some more of these puzzle pieces as part of the next step. And I want to see how she's running a women's retreat as well. I really respect her. She's a great spiritual teacher. I know I actually think I've had some past life connections with her as well, which is why I felt drawn to her the minute I ever met her in real life was years ago. And as I said, I wasn't that spiritual then. And I remember she came to do a talk in Dublin and she just started this very amazing language. And I was like, who is this woman and what is she talking about? Like, I've never heard anybody talk like that in my life. And I was just so drawn to her work. And then when she came out with the book, Gifts of the Essential Oils, that was like a rebirth for me with the oils. Like, because for the first, they'll say, 2015 to 2021, that's like, what, 6-7 years? The first 6 or 7 years of me and the oils was a very practical thing. Like, it was skincare, it was immunity, it was cleaning the house, it was using it on my kids. Spiritually, I had no clue about them and no real interest in that. I used to think that was all just silliness, to be honest with you. And I'd be like, where are they writing these books? Where are they getting this information from? Like, they pulling it from thin air? Like, how do they know all this emotional stuff? It just made no sense to me. But it wasn't until I read the book, and I bought all the spiritual and emotional books. I just didn't really fully get them or resonate with them. But when I bought The Gifts of the Essential Oils, it was like, what is this? This is the real deal for me. I could finally put a framework that made sense to remember the spiritual and emotional benefits of the oils by looking at them as the elements of the plants they come from. All of a sudden, that just made so much sense to me. And I know a lot of it was channeled, but at that point, I was way more familiar with channeling and that kind of a thing, so I got it. And yeah, and I think it was Vanessa actually that mentioned the Akashic Records to me the very first day. And then there was another leader from, I think she's from Norway, who I really respect as well, a very spiritual leader, and she mentioned the Akashic Records, and then it was like, whoa, what is the Akashic Records? And I just wanted to tell people, like, okay, I've done a course in the Akashic Records, right? But most of the course was actually just a spiritual course. It was a women's circle. The actual part of learning the records was quite small, very, very small part of it. So, but obviously by doing the whole course with Vanessa, it was preparing us to be in the right place to understand and access the records, right? But you don't have to do a whole course to start trying to open your records. Like, there is some really good audiobooks or regular books that give you the sacred prayer and give you the background information. You could definitely just start with just reading a book, because I know money is always got other places it has to go, right? So you might not want to put a lot of time or budget into it right now. But if what I'm saying speaks to anybody's soul today, just get a book. I think the latest book I'm reading at the moment is by a woman called Linda Howe. There's also another book that was very good. I read it by Maureen St. Germain. Both very good books. The Linda Howe book, she said it was actually a 2-day introductory workshop that she's put into the book, and she gives you everything she teaches in her class. That's on Audible. So, like, you could definitely just go with the book and get her prayer from her website, which is free, actually. The thing that makes doing the Akashic Records easier is to practice it on other people, because that's when you really start to get the confidence in that what's coming through is coming from a spiritual source and not your own egoic mind. And by practicing with other people, you're forced to sit there and shut down the ego mind, because the ego mind is saying, come on, what's the answer? You better come up with the goods here. You're going to look like an idiot. Like, what are you going to say? What about that thing you remember? But then the Akashic Records, masters, teachers, and loved ones, they're coming through with information that usually is like, huh? I don't want to say that. Where did that come from? And then when you say it, and then the person is like, oh, yes. And they tell you something, and you're like, oh, my God. And then the more you do it, you start to know the difference between those two voices, those two sources of information. And then you, with more and more practice, you could really know what's the spiritual source and what's your own mind, your own ego. And it's so liberating. I mean, I don't think there's a skill out there that's as valuable as something like that. Like, I could literally go to the Akashic Records and ask them any question of what I need help with. And because I've spent the time to craft the difference between the two sources of information, I have that as a lifelong support system. You can open up your Akashic Records and paint, write a book, do your tarot cards, do anything, right? Because you're now getting more information from spirit. And the other thing I love about it is it's a very safe place to be. Sometimes if you dabble with mediumship, or even tarot cards if you don't know what you're doing, or anything esoteric that you don't always know where the information is coming from, and you can be attracting heavier, dense energy, so you do have to be very careful. When you have your Akashic Records open, that is pure divine love. Because of the way you open the records, it's a sacred prayer, and that only invites in God's love and light being. That is an amazing part about it as well. So yeah, that's kind of why I've kind of geared more to the Akashic. I think because I've been so fascinated also with the past lives and the QHHT and the Atlantis and all these things. It was like one puzzle piece after another and bringing me to where I am now. And it's exciting. I actually did a reading for my husband, which I was going to wait until I had done loads of practice with strangers, because I thought he would be the hardest person ever to do, because obviously I know him so intimately, right? So I was like, oh. And anyways, one day I was like, okay, Kieran, let me do your records. And he was like, really? I thought you were going to wait. I was like, no, you can call it out. Let's just do it. And we went outside into our new garden, and we sat beside a hawthorn tree. I didn't even know it was a hawthorn tree. I'm only learning about the trees now that we've moved out the country, and I know that's one of the sacred Celtic trees. Recently, I've been looking into that, and it was just funny that I intuitively brought him to the hawthorn tree, which is like the tree of healing and love, the fairy tree, right? And had the most amazing, profound session with him. I was blown away. He was like, Linda, I would have paid you like 300 or 400 euros for that. That was incredible. That was not my wife. Like, what was that? And I was like, oh no. So that gave me such confidence that I'm on the right path, because he would be my biggest fan, but he would also know me, and he'd be my biggest critic, if he didn't think what I was doing was good, So I think that's why I was scared to do it with him. But yeah, I actually found it easier to get spiritual downloads with him and cut out my ego and mind with him more than any of the other strangers. So it was really interesting. But yeah, I think any spiritual path is worth following, and sometimes you have to be like me and you have to try loads of different things and dip your toe into a bunch of them before you'll eventually find the one. And it can be very frustrating for a while, because I remember the tarot cards. I spent a lot of money on those courses and I felt really drawn to them, and I still do. But Shani, I have a really good master's degree in marketing, right? I went to a very good school and I was a good student. I cannot learn the tarot cards. They're so hard. I've never had this happen to me before, where I'm intellectually just not at the races with something. But I know it will come in time. I'm not going to give up on them, but they are really esoteric. You have to be really good at tarot. You would need to know astrology, numerology, colors, symbology, mythology, all the vastness of the spiritual world comes into the tarot. So it's a lifelong quest. And it was another thing that, initially I felt drawn to them. I had no idea why. I thought it was because I liked angel cards and oracle cards. It seemed like a good next step, right? But I was always so brainwashed thinking that they were the devil from the church that I couldn't go near them, which is absolutely crazy. And I remember that I used to think like that. But it doesn't matter. People put something into your head. Rational thinking goes out the window. Even intuitive goes out the window. You're brainwashed, right? So I had to overcome that brainwashing and keep going with my intuition. It was a tarot book I was drawn to in an esoteric shop the day after my son's funeral, which kind of really got me interested in them. And there was something about learning about the archetypes, the human archetypes, and the fact that life is very cyclical and it's very up and down. So like you might be feeling that, oh my God, I just had what we call in tarot the tower moment, where like everything has just fallen apart. Like you feel totally devastated and shocked and at a loss of how to move forward, which is what I had when my son transitioned. That was a tower moment for me. But because in the tarot, the next card after the tower, I think it's the star. The star is when you start to see the potential and dream again of a brighter future. It's a very poignant part of your life, because if you can start to see hope when you've been through hell, you're on the road to recovery then. There's the glimmer of hope in the stars. So anyways, by learning the tarot, it really helped me realize that no matter what you're going through now, there's always going to be a way out and a cyclical way to go through life. And it gave me a lot of hope. And I never thought in my wildest dreams that tarot was so intellectual. Like, I remember going on one podcast and there was like all these Harvard psychologists discussing the tarot and Jungian theory, and I was like, this is mad. I thought it was just like stuff that like fortune tellers played around with, and I couldn't understand why I was so drawn to it. But then when I realized what it really was, I was like, oh, okay, I get it now, because I do like kind of intellectual topics. I like to research things, so it resonated then with why I was drawn to them. Well, I just couldn't get my head around it, no matter how many courses I did. I mean, I do know a lot more than I did, obviously. But to sit down and confidently read my own cards or someone else's cards, I am not there yet, like, at all. I always have to look up the cards and sit for ages thinking about what it could mean, and oftentimes ask one of my tarot expert friends, did I get that right? What do you think about that? So the confidence isn't there for me yet. But I loved how you could just every day pull a card or two and use that to reflect on how you were feeling or what did that mean to you. Because even forget about the fact that you don't believe in what we call oracular consciousness, is when you're tapping into an oracle of consciousness, right? The divine. You're trying to tap into something higher power, higher knowledge. And you can do that through any form of divination, looking at clouds, listening to random lyrics in a song, opening up a book to a random page, using rune stones. I mean, the list is endless of divination tools. Tarot is just one of those, right? People have been doing this since the beginning of mankind, divination, to get answers outside of their own self. You don't have to believe in any of that. You could literally get a lot out of oracle cards, angel cards, and tarot cards, because they're just a form of self-reflection. So if you go back to when I was doing my coaching and I didn't believe in any of that spiritual stuff or even know what it was all about self-reflection, introspection, asking questions, having a moment to journal and see, okay, where is this coming from? What does that mean? But how often in day-to-day life do we get to do that? We don't do it that much. But if you sit down as part of a spiritual practice and you use something like a card, my God, does that get your mind thinking about solutions and problems and things you should be more grateful for. And it just puts you in a really different mindset when you tap into something like a set of cards. It doesn't have to mean you believe in the information coming from anywhere else or And the other thing is, it's not really about predicting the future. People get that really wrong, as did I. There is no predicting the future because the future is still very much in flux. It's free will, right? So the cards are really there to guide you to know where you're at right now so that you can take something out of that to change and be on the best path forward for the future. It's not about, scary future stuff coming at you. It's not what it's about. And I think my favorite oracle card creator and teacher who I love is a lady called Colette Barron-Reid. I find her oracle cards are just so amazingly accurate. And her YouTube videos and her podcast, she's something else. She's been doing it. She was one of the very first oracle deck creators. So she's been a great teacher for me as well. So yeah, I probably blattered on a lot now. You can probably tell that I've been pretty immersed in all this stuff.
I don't think you've blathered on. It's been really interesting to hear your experiences and your journey and the things that have really resonated with you in where you are and how you want to express yourself and who you want to be in this life. And it sounds like your spiritual journey, from what you've said, was really about opening yourself up to understanding through the experiences that you were having that there is a potential to commune with spirit. It sounds like you really had to have that confirmed through the experiences that you've had. And once you had the confirmation in your experiences that you could communicate with God, with the divine, with spirit, you then have been able to just really run with that and also find what you've needed within yourself to be able to give back to others so that they can have the confirmation that they need, that they can communicate with spirit, and how that can completely transform your experience of life. So it sounds like you've been on an absolutely wild journey of understanding and experiencing and really coming to understand who you are and how you can give back from what you've been through as well. You know, I feel so humbled and in awe of who you are and how you've been able to transform these tragedies, these really dark, deep, grief-filled experiences into hope and light. That for me is the essence of alchemy. You know, that for me is the essence of really transforming negativity into positivity. And it's such a gift that you have to be able to do that and then offer something of value to other people from that darkness. I'm just so in awe of you at the moment. I just feel so just so grateful that you've taken the time to open up and to share your story and everything that you've been through, and the way in which you've transformed your inner world, your inner life, and how you are using that to continually give to others. It's so inspiring. I really just want to thank you for sharing your heart and your soul with me.
One thing
and
I
with
just
the
want to add to
listeners.
that, Shanine, is I don't really take the credit for that because I 100% believe that I prayed to my guardian angels, Archangel Michael, to my son, to Jesus, to Mary, all my spirit guides, especially in my darkest moments and when the negativity was getting on top of me. And I just simply asked them, please show me the right teachers, the right information, the right tools that I need to bring light back into my life, to feel joy again, to heal. And I kept asking, I still ask. And it sounds really simplistic, but it really does work. Like, I can't tell you the amount of times I've been in a dark place and I pray, asking. And when I say pray, I just mean talking out loud or in my mind to the spirit guides, not formal prayer, but asking those. And then next thing, some book would fall off the shelf, or a Google, some ad would pop up somewhere, and it would just lead me to the next thing that I needed. And or sometimes I would just be in my room, and the sun would just kind of shine in through the window at a really weird part of the day, like when it was pissing rain outside, and then the sun would just peek through one cloud, come through my window, hit my rainbow catcher, fill my room with rainbows, and I would just feel this, oh my god, just sense of love and peace fill the whole room when I was in a really dark place. And I felt like there was an angel in the room. I remember even one day that happened, and I had ordered a Archangel Michael statue because I wanted to be constantly reminded of him and to keep praying to him. And this is the statue. Actually, I have it on my desk now, but it arrived like the minute the sun started shining, catching the rainbows, and I felt it. I remember the Amazon guy came with this statue, and I was like, oh my god, it's just incredible, you know? So yeah, just to kind of finish on that note, don't forget to ask whoever you feel that you resonate with in the spirit world. It doesn't matter who it is, but you ask them for help, ask them for what you need for your healing path, and they will send it to you, and quite quickly as well. It's pretty amazing. So for me, I just love the angels. I find them really so supportive, you know? Yeah.
Oh, Linda, thank you so much for taking the time to come and share your heart and soul with me today. I feel so honoured that you've shared some of the deepest, darkest experiences of your life, and how you've really transformed yourself and allowed those experiences to help you find who you are and how you can be of service in life. So just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for coming on to the podcast. And yeah, I wish you all the best. And I wondered if, before I finish, if you can send through some links of how people can connect with you or get in touch with you if there's anything that they've heard in what you've shared today that resonates with them and they want to explore what you can offer them from where you are. It would be really lovely to have those on the show notes, and also any of the books or the references that you've shared in the conversation today. If you could send me links to those, and then I can attach that as well if people want to explore some of what you've uncovered in your exploration of spiritual knowledge.
Perfect, yeah. I know some of the key ones, all right, I remember. I had not planned on going into that much detail about some of that, but it's fascinating what did come through. It's obviously meant to, so.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Shannine, for hosting this podcast and inviting me on. It's given me great confidence to do something like this again, or someday maybe host a podcast or something. I just think it's a great platform, really. And I love the name, Chit Chat. I like that. So.
Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing that with me, and I hope that you continue to go on and share your story and your experiences in your life. Yeah, that sounds great. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again for coming on. It's been absolutely wonderful to talk to you, and I will look forward to chatting again soon.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Take care. Bye.